Okay, and welcome to question 8 on the 2017 paper 1 ordinary level leaving cert. So question 8 starts here now. It's a 5B, so there's a mid-partial and full marks. Let's see what's important here. A company makes and sells fiber optic cable, so it's not really that important. It can sell at most 200 kilometers of cable in a week. Okay, for some reason we have that restriction on us. For a certain range of its production, the company has found that profit can be modeled using the function. Now, P of X equals, you get this combination of terms. Okay. Now, it has an X squared, so it's going to be quadratic. Okay, it's a negative X squared, so a negative squared would be usually graphed something like that. Okay. But we may be focusing on a segment of that. Okay, and probably, if I was to remove that there, in reality, we're going to end up with something along the lines of where most of this is going to be in the positive range. So it's, again, it depends. We're focusing on a segment of that where profit is. Okay. Now, obviously, you can't have your function existing here because you can't have negative profit. Actually, you can have negative profit when you think about it. But it's most likely to be in the positive range. Okay. And they're saying here where X is less than or equal to 200. So for whatever reason, there's a stipulation we cut off there. Okay. Now in the function X, now before we deal with that, normally I like to write this, instead of the X like that, just to focus on the fact that this X is not connected. It's just telling you what input you're dealing with right now. So really if you do it as a subscript, it might be more clear. This almost looks like it's P times X. And just be aware that in function notation, that's not multiplication. This P of X is one concept. It's one thing. And now, most often, you might call that Y. Okay? So Y equals blah, 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 blah. Now, use the profit function P of X to find out how much money the company loses if it does not sell any cable. Okay? So, if X is the number of kilometers of cable sold, P of X is the profit, okay? If you sell no cable, that means X equals 0. Now, a company, if it's not selling anything, still has costs, overhead costs, all that kind of stuff, salaries, etc. So there will be a loss if you sell nothing. So I suppose arguably this is the negative. Okay, I'll go straight to the answer here. So I have my function written out. My input, as long as I've realized that's what the question's asking, that it's X is 0. Okay, then I put 0 in instead of X in the function. Put it to the calculator, or if you think about it, that's going to cancel, that's going to cancel. You'll be left with minus 2,000. Okay. Now that's a 2,000 loss, in terms of profit. Okay. So, just always remember, if you were stuck on a question like this, and you have an equation, okay, you have a question, what else can you do? I would, if I was stuck, I'd put even just put the 200 in instead of the X. And, put it to the calculator. If you're completely off the wall, you get no marks. But sometimes you'll catch a mark here and there. And if you were able to catch the mid-partial here, you'd have got a two marks from nothing as such. So it's almost sometimes about trying to cut your losses and get something from every question, and then do well on the questions you can. And overall, that'll bring your grade up, and that can be significant. That 2 marks, for all you know, could be the difference between A, B, C, whatever, or higher 1, higher 2, whatever it is now. Okay, so question 8, part B here. In a particular week, the company made a profit of 8,350. Find the number of kilometers of cable it sold that week. Okay, so this situation we're being told that P of X, the profit, okay, equals whatever, 8,350. Excuse me, very bad use of the keyboard, or the mouse. So if we know what X is, okay, we're trying to find what X is. We know what the profit is. Okay, so if we use our function, if you look at there's 2 unknowns. Okay, we're also told in the question that the profit is that. So now there's actually only one unknown. Here is that P of X and P of X are the same thing. You can replace them with each other. So you end up with this step. Okay. Now that's an equation of one unknown. Now it is a quadratic. Okay. So from my knowledge of quadratics, I'm expecting at some stage now to have to solve it. The question now is, will it solve easy, or will I have to use the minus b formula? So we end up joining everything to one side, okay, just to simplify it, and those two things combined together, the 8,000 whatever and 2,000 gives me 10,350. So now I have my quadratic equation, and I'm trying to find what two factors satisfy that quadratic. Now I could use the minus b formula here, okay. What I've done is used factorization. It can take time, this kind of stuff, to go what two numbers will multiply to give the 10,350 and add to give minus 275. So sometimes it might be quicker just go ahead and use the minus b formula. But again, that just depends on each person. So they are the two factors that work. Okay, so I have the two factors, so I solve for them. That means I can split them into two equations. And I suppose the basic gist here is, if you have a term multiplied by another term, so if that was like a times b, and the answer is 0, okay, this is the logic here, okay, how could that be? If a was 1 and b was 1, 1 times 1 would be 1. If a or b are positive whole numbers, the answer would always be a positive whole number. The only way you can get 0 as an answer is if one of those values, a or b, was 0. So 0 times 1 is 0. 1 times 0 is 0. Now, if 1 is 0, could both not be 0? And that means that you can, in that logic, you can basically go and split these into two different equations. You have x minus 45 equals 0. Bring the minus 45 across, being subtracted to the left, becomes that on the right. Same thing with the minus 230, subtracted on the left, comes across the equal, it becomes the opposite. They're my two factors, so anywhere between 45 kilometers of cable and 230 kilometers of cable. But we can ignore x is equal to 230 because you're told in the question statement that 230 is outside the production limit. So my answer is x equals 45. Job done. Now, question C, 8C part 1 here, you have a table to fill in. Now this is just basically, you're using the function, okay, you're given different inputs, different x values, you put them into your function, and you just generate the answer using the calculator, and then record it. They've given you a sample one here, so if you check it, p of 70, if you put that through the function you're given in the question, the answer you should get would be 12,350. So that satisfies, shows you what they're doing. You just have to do it 5 times the same thing. Now, I've shown a sample calculation, which is really important. A lot of times students just go put the answers in, and they've put something wrong in the calculator, and all these answers that they've generated are wrong. Not because they didn't know what they were doing, but because they just made a simple error. And we all do that. If you've shown a sample calculation, okay, then you can see it's the correct method, but like misread or whatever. It'll be penalized, but not penalized fully, because even though the answers are all wrong, it's wrong because of a simple error. Whereas if you've no sample calculation, for all the grade or knows, you just made up those numbers. Okay, and you're taking a chance. So we have to assume that's what's happening and give 0 grade. Anyway, that's that. So it's 8 part C part 1, moving on to the 8 part C part 2. You now have to graph that data, okay? So you're given the graph, I suppose paper, or the graph already built into the question paper. And X here, the X-axis is the number of cables sold. The Y-axis, the P of X axis, is the profit. Okay, so I've generated the answer here. And I can ignore these lines for a minute. They're from future questions. Basically, I have my points from the table. I plot them on the XY graph. And then I join them with a smooth line. Okay, not static lines, okay? Or not a straight line through the points. It's a curved line, which is what we'd expect from a quadratic. We're kind of zoomed in on a part of the quadratic. And if you zoomed out, you'd see the full shape, the full shape like that, whatever, taking hold. But we're only focused in on a tiny little section of it. And I move on, so that's 8 part C part 2. So in 8 part C part 3, it's saying, use your graph, okay, to estimate the lower and upper range of sales in kilometers of cable in order to make a profit of between 10,000 and 14,000 in a particular week. Now, if you know what's happening in the graph, then this is easy, okay? But if you got to understand that the profit is what's being represented on the y-axis. the x-axis is representing the number of cables, kilometers of cable, whatever. So it's the graph that's needed, and whatever graph you've drawn will be used to work out what the actual answer is. So there's not a set answer here. The answer is always based on the student's work. So if I go back here to my work as such, I'm recording between 10,000, so I bring a line over from 10,000 to hit the graph, and drop it straight down. Okay, and record that figure. Then do the same thing for 14,000, hits the graph and drops straight down, and record that figure. Now to my guesstimate there, it's probably what, 55-ish? That looks like 82. Okay, but I put the answers in here now. 55, 83, okay, whatever. Okay, there's always a tolerance, so if you're off by 1 or 2, whatever, in how you judge it, well, that's, look, human perception. There's no right or wrong there. Well, there is right or wrong, but every person could guesstimate differently. So the part D here, okay, I'll go back and just read the question. Now part D, part 3 there was a 5B, part D here is a 10C. So you use calculus. Now this calculus is another word for integration, differentiation. Actually, calculus is another word for integration, but it's not something that's on the past course. But just as an aside, integration would be the reverse of differentiation. If I've said before, everything in maths must be reversible. So if you have a process of differentiation that changes something into a different equation or function, well then you must have a way of reversing that. And that reversal method is called integration. But again, it's not something on the past leavers or course. So this is really saying use differentiation to find the number of kilometers of cable sold when the profit is increasing at a rate of 105 per kilometers. 105 euro per kilometer of cable, whatever, produced. Now, calculus is a way of working out the slope of something, and that something is usually reserved for the slope of a curved graph. If it's linear, we have other methods for doing this. Okay, so at some point on that curve, on our graph here, so go back here, the slope at some stage of this graph is 105. You're trying to find out what x value that corresponds to. So if we have the equation of that graph, which we do is the function we were given, if we differentiate it, we get a new function that describes the slope at any point. If we then use the slope value we're given, we can calculate the x value that it came from. So let's get stuck in and do that, okay? So I have my function given the question. Now, if you were stuck here and didn't really know what was going on, and you see calculus, and if it does trigger a memory, oh, that's that differentiation thing, just differentiate it. You may not know what you're doing, but you're doing something relevant, something you think will work. And by doing it, you get like some marks. You definitely get the low partial there. If you can then make the connection that, oh, that P of x, which means the slope, this is often called the slope equation, okay? So the slope equation, if you're given the slope then, which you were, it's 105, you can put them equal to each other. So now you end up an equation of one unknown. Okay, so that's that there. So solve it, okay? Now I bring the minus 2x, so subtracted on the right becomes added on the left. At the same time I'm moving the 105, it's positive on the left, becomes the opposite, negative on the right. Do that subtraction, you end up with 2x equals 170, which just means that x is equal to 85. So 85 kilometers of cable generates a profit of 105 euro per kilometer. Okay. That's question 8. Okay, so thanks very much, and see you in question 9.